Are we live? Are we not?
All
Says
right. We're live. So we are welcoming in. Of course, I've got my co-host Drew. October won't be able to make it in, and then we've got two special guests, which is Chris from Ghost Squad Scotland, and
Yes,
we
there we go.
also have Dakota from Bald and Bonkers. Also, did I say that
Hmm.
right?
You did.
Okay, so, alrighty, so we are ready to get this ball going. Hello, Dobby Socks and Christina Bell, that's in the chat, and PWI
Hi,
Spiritual
Ginger.
Investigators.
Yeah.
So, this is kind of an open thing that hopefully y'all are going to tell us all about aliens and whatever the unknown of whatever you want to talk about. It's up to you guys.
What?
As soon as I
careful
was
what you wish
telling
for.
her, as
Uh,
soon as I was telling Mystical Love and Light about yous, she obviously wanted to talk to yous, and she's been watching the show for a good year now, I would imagine. And much like some of us who have always known about aliens and things, but scared to ask, maybe scared to
mm,
bring the subject up to a lot of people and things, I was basically giving the vibes over to her that if she wanted to ask any question about aliens and things, that you two guys are really the people to ask. So, hence why the interview tonight or the chat tonight is
you
just
got
that.
you got all night.
Y'all can
Well,
talk about whatever you want because I myself have
hey
had
Danny.
some experiences with the alien situation. My husband
Mm.
was actually has been abducted, but that's his story
Mm.
to tell. But he actually remembers being in, the spaceship, the craft, however you want to call it. Mine was more moving me from where I'm at and putting me someplace else that didn't bring me back, kind of a
Mm.
thing. And so I was listening to the stories about him and his life with that all going on, and I was so intrigued with it. I just want to hear everything.
Oh, well, you're in for a treat. You're
Oh
in for
yeah.
a treat. Because
Oh yeah.
Dakota is a massive knowledge, as everybody knows. Dakota is a massive knowledge, you know.
Maybe start off with introducing yourselves and
There
Dakota
you go.
tell your story about what happened when you were a kid. Because that story that happened when you were a kid, it just really is where it started, isn't it? So maybe if you just introduce yourself and tell us that story first.
Honestly, Joe, I don't even know for sure when it started because the more I go into it, the more that's coming out, and
The
Elena's not
rabbit
helping.
hole.
Oh,
The rabbit
I'm just
hole,
reading
isn't
Danny's.
it?
I'm just reading Danny's comment there. I couldn't help myself. I was abducted once. She forced me to say I do.
oh.
Uncle Danny.
Oh, funny. Where is that?
Well,
Okay, here it
Oh my
is.
god, Danny
well,
man.
he's
Oh.
technically not wrong there.
Mm. He's lucky he brought her back.
Yeah, exactly.
So, for me, the ET situation. Well, there's actually a paper trail that actually shows that I've been walking around before I was actually born, but the first major incident that was kind of a obvious red flag that something happened was it took place when I was about 5 years old, and the thing that happened beyond reasonable doubt was that there was one morning out of the blue I woke up 30 miles away from where I was supposed to be one night. So I went to bed at my mother's house. The next morning, I woke up at my grandparents'. Was it a case of where she just dropped me off because she had to go to work? Normally, one would think so. But you don't exactly see. The house I woke up at was my grandparents, my mom's parents. And you don't exactly call your parents bawling your eyes out thinking that your oldest child had been kidnapped by a potentially abusive father if you're the one that dropped him off. So how did I get 30 miles away into a locked house that not even the dogs realized I was there?
Crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's
And
just
see,
so unbelievable.
I can pretty much say I know that kind of stuff happens. I was driving home from work, and you know how like you'll be driving, then all of a sudden it's like, where am I? So I was like, I was driving, recognizing everything. I don't know what happened. And I was like, where am I? Because I was way far away in a whole different city, driving, not having a clue where I was, being scared, trying to figure out what happened. So I know exactly where you're, you know, what you're talking about, Dakota.
Yeah, it can be kind of a scary feeling because I wasn't really a small kid, so it wasn't like someone just picked me up, dropped me off somewhere, and just spaced it out. And I've spoken to quite a few investigators about it who've been at this a lot longer than I've been alive. And despite what people think, I'm only 27. I know I look older. I get it. It's okay. Chris thought I was 45 when we first met, apparently.
I thought you were old, actually, but that's just my
You've got an
opinion.
old soul.
I've gone to people who have studied this a lot longer than I've been around in this meat suit, I guess they would say. And even they're like, well, it's not exactly impossible, but there's been weirder ones. And there was one particular case, the woman's name, I believe it was Lauren McDonald. She's well known for doing like regression therapy, trying to help people remember if they have incidents like that. She told me there was one incident where there was these 3 young boys who disappeared from their backyard one night. They were just outside playing. Next thing you know, they find them about 3 houses down in a pool that was locked and sealed.
Wow.
The kids were dead.
Oh.
And they have, the house was locked. Nobody was home. I think she said this took place back in the 70s, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Again, there's also a more famous example where you had the Betty and Barney Hill incident where, let's see, what was it? A couple years later, Betty's slip appeared across the country on a completely different person.
That's right.
Where every now and then, people don't exactly come back with everything that they were taken with.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets scrambled while they're up there.
Wow.
So do you think they just get the coordinates mixed up then? So like when they're dropping people back off, if you like, it's maybe they're mixed up to where they picked them up or that type of thing.
It could easily be a situation where you have to look at it case by case.
Mm-hmm.
In mine, it may have actually been a situation where I asked them to leave me at my grandparents' after what happened because I didn't exactly feel safe going back home.
True.
But then,
Or maybe they seen it was a safer place for you and dropped you off there.
It could very well be it, but there's also certain things about my story that, based on what I've been told, rules got broken that night if that was the case.
Right.
I'm not supposed to have any memory of that, but again, you don't exactly just forget a day where you woke up someplace random and everybody thought you were kidnapped. And you're just like, no, I'm fine. But then again, I was 5 years old and really big into X-Men cartoons, so I thought I was going to get to join the X-Men. That was I didn't know.
You didn't have time to flash that light before your eyes and your mother's eyes and your papa's eyes.
Huh.
But what's followed since then is obviously showing you that you were meant for this path. I mean, I don't know how much you actually know about Dakota Mystical Love and Light. I mean, he has got a couple of books out as well. I don't know if you know he's story or not, but he has now discovered that he's got an alien wife and kids. If you would want to maybe explain that.
I heard that. So yeah, that's real intriguing to hear more about. And then also too, Chris, if you have anything to add in or whatever, you can jump in whenever y'all want. It's kind of like y'all stage.
She just likes to hear. She just wanted to hear your stories, basically.
My story. Oh, my story. Well, the spiritual stuff, I've always experienced spiritual stuff since I was young, seeing things in the house. But obviously, that I didn't know it at the time, but that was Robert, my house guest. You know, everybody knows Robert. Drew, you know Robert. And he's the spirit that I've got in my house. Danny,
That's your spirit you have, right, in your house? That's your spirit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But in my younger days, I did experience some weird stuff. And there was one night, you know how you get the sleep paralysis? I was maybe, what night? What age would I be? And I'm thinking, I'm going back here, 12. I can't really remember because my memories, because I'm getting old. Like Dakota says I'm getting old. But there was one night I was lying in my bed and I was lying on my stomach and I looked over to the corner and I could see this thing standing and I could not move whatsoever.
Huh.
And I looked over and there was this, it looked human, but it wasn't human. It was weird because it was like see-through. And a lot of people say, it was a spirit and all that, but I don't think it was, because it was, I'm going to say something because it's like something about a horror show. You could see its bones. You could see everything. It was like as if its skin was made out of clear plastic. Right? That's what it was like, right? And I seen it. But anyway, never mind that. That went over, and we still experienced the kind of paranormal things on in life. And then I blame, where is it? How does my finger work here? There we go.
There you go.
I bumped into him at a place, and I'll just say a place because that's what I call it. And strange stuff started to happen. Alien stuff, UFOs, seeing UFOs. I mean, I've seen about maybe 5 or 6 UFOs since then. And I've seen a UFO maybe the year before I met him, which was interesting. That was the video, remember I showed you that, Dakota? We tried to, the one with Ken Lewis. Then we started getting into the Galactic Federation and stuff. And I started to open up more about it. And I started to talk on here about it. And my neighbour across the road from me one day messaged me. She says, listen, I'm right into the UFO stuff. And he says, all right. She says, listen, I seen a UFO one night, kind of black triangle. But it wasn't like the military ones. It was like completely smooth. She tell us exactly what it looked like. And she says, and I says, where was that about? And she says, I think you'd be around about maybe 11 or 12 at the time. And I think that was the night that I seen that apparition. But that ties in to Dakota's story. Dakota, do you want to take it for here for this one?
All right, so being that we are going 20 years past, so a few details may be a little fudged, and with some of the stuff I've found out not too long ago, it goes even further back with that. But this incident Chris was talking about took place, he guesses about January, middle of January 1996.
Yeah.
My birthday, January 19th, 1996. So it's about 3 o'clock, just before 3 o'clock in the morning when this took place. Factor in the 7-hour time difference between here in Scotland when it's daylight savings isn't confusing the hell out of us.
Yeah.
Within 10 minutes of Chris seeing this apparition, I was born.
Wow.
Dang.
Yes. And the woman seen the UFO at the same time of year, so I think it's at the same time as he was born, because it was January when she seen UFO. She worked nights and she was going to her work. She was a care worker, and she went out. She got a call out to go out around about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. That's why she's seen it.
I definitely believe that we were all destined to meet, because the way that we all met was just placed together, you know, especially used to. It's as if yous were destined to take this path.
The thing is that, did you know that Dakota was on a tour of Scotland a year before we met, and he actually came through our village, Drew? He went to, like, is it Rabbie Burns Cottage? You know,
I remember him saying that, I know. See, that's...
that's weird.
Mm-hmm. I always have this reoccurring. It's not a dream. I don't know what it is, but I've always been able, like, if I'm looking at the sky or something, like, and I got pictures somewhere in my computer amongst 10 or 15,000 pictures I have. I have pictures of where I can actually see, like, UFOs, spaceships, whatever you want to call them, and they're behind a cloud, like they're cloaked, but yet I can clearly see the outlines of them, because it's a darker shade of gray, so I can clearly see it. And the thing that I keep seeing in my head that I keep thinking might be from another past life. I don't know, but you know, if you look up at the stars, you see what you assume is all stars. But when I look up at the stars, I see like hundreds of like moving objects. Like if I'm not on this planet looking up, almost like I'm on a different planet looking, and I see all the movement, you know, and I know what they are. It's almost like they're getting into some kind of a formation, or getting like ready, set up for something. I always see that ever since I was a lot younger than what I am now, because I'm older now. But it's always like, one day, am I going to act that for real in this life, or was that something I had seen in like in a past life or something?
See, I forgot as well that I used to sit and look up at the sky. My mum reminded me only a couple of weeks ago that I used to sit up for hours on end and just watch the skies, and then I remembered, you know.
We've all got
what are we looking for? What is it that we're all preparing to see is my question. What do you think we're all watching for?
I think we're all put here to do something, right? I think we're all put here we've all got a purpose. In my case, I don't know why they picked me, to be purely honest, because I know I'm like you wouldn't believe. Kind of funny side it there.
Used to learn people, probably.
Maybe it's just a joke in there kind of stuff. But see, when I was a wee boy, I used to sit and point up at the plough. I had a fascination with the plough, and I still do. I still have a fascination with the plough in the night sky,
right?
Which is strange. I seen it. It was last year. I was looking at my window and I seen it, and I sat. It must have been for about an hour, just staring at it. I've got a weird fascination with the plough in the night sky. But I think we've all got a mission in life, and I think that the star seeds, like your chosen star seeds, I think we've all got a mission. Is like Dakota's got a very important mission, whereas I've just got one to annoy him. That's what I was sent here for.
You're here to test his patience.
Aye. See how long it takes before he snaps. You know, they've probably got a bet. Let's bet a couple of million, you know, at $1,000,000. Let's
Please,
see if
Anne.
snaps up. You know?
Oh,
Dakota,
yeah, he is.
What's your thoughts, Dakota, on this one?
So Lee says, I saw a lot of moving stars one time during a boxing match. I got hit so hard they were floating all around my head. LOL.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna try to take it off. So, Dakota, work your way into what I was seeing on your video about your wife and stuff, and how that came to be, and how you figured that out.
This is about to get depressing. So
I think it's an amazing story. I mean,
I've
heard your story way back, even before we joined that company. In fact, I think it was just us who joined the company, and we found out you were a specialist of the strange. Obviously, your own channel is. And when I read your story or I watched your video about your story, it's an amazing. And to see what you found out from then, it's
Yeah.
just the reason that we've all been put together because you
I'm
found out so
fascinated.
much.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with it.
I'll be honest. I'm because of how much I've actually put together. I've been trying to actually physically sit down and write out everything as close to chronological order as I can because, like I said before, there's actually a paper trail that proves that I've been dealing with stuff out of outer space, and it's something that I personally reached out to Elena Denon with because
Oh, I
a
love
lot of it,
her.
a lot of my situation intersected with her. In fact, reading her books almost felt like it would cause seizures because I would recognize so much that basically the sensation would be like walking into someone's house who you just met and realizing they have pictures of your grandparents.
Right.
Obviously, even if it's the most friendly circumstances, you're going to start asking some questions. The incident that brought this to my attention, I mean, Iron Fire and Horse, they made a joke earlier, like, was I born in an egg? Psychic stuff has been around me for a long time, pretty much as long as I've been able to talk. I was one of those kids where there's actually a story that gets tossed around about me where one day I walked up to my stepmom, put my hand on her stomach, and said, "My sister's in here." Like, all right, whatever. Next day, my stepmom feels ill, goes to the doctor. Boom, she's pregnant. A day before she actually showed any physical signs, so obviously her first kid, she's not going to be sure what to do, and that just freaked her out. The situation with my Star family, as the label gets tossed around, I first became aware that they were around fully when I was about 12 years old after a suicide attempt. I tried to hang myself and something ended up stopping me, taking me to what looked like this blue void. I mean, I couldn't see anything around me. The way light itself moved kind of looked like I was underwater, for lack of a better word. All of a sudden I see what looks like this man I couldn't really make out any details. Their image was blurry, but looked like they had kind of long, dark blonde hair, wore like kind of a white robe. I couldn't make out any details of the face or anything beyond that. They walk up to me, say, "Dakota, there's someone here to see you." They step aside, and all of a sudden I see this little girl standing behind him, just absolutely bawling her eyes out. First thing I notice is that this little girl looked just like me. I could see it right away. She runs up to me, gives me a big hug, and says, "Daddy, please don't do it."
Wow.
Now, so seeing this, I feel this pit in my stomach. Like, how could I do this to this little girl? I had no clue who she was, but I could feel that attachment. She gives me a kiss on the cheek, vision or whatever, and I'm back in the bedroom like nothing had happened. It wasn't until years later that certain events started taking place where people were actually being targeted by a very nasty spiritual attack. And they all started saying, "Well, there's this little girl that showed up." And I'm just like, then they start describing, I'm just like, wait a sec. I actually have an uncle on my mom's side who I get mistaken for all the time. He has 3 young ones, all under the age of 9, who all have called me dad at some point because their father and I, basically some days the only difference between us is that he can grow better facial hair. So I happen to have a picture of his fraternal twin girls sitting by me, and they started describing what they were seeing after these attacks. I was like, by any chance, I hold up the picture, and they would have been like not even a year old in it. All of a sudden, they just start jumping back like, Dakota, how do you have that picture? It's like, oh, those are my little cousins. Why? It's like, it looks exactly like them. See, the twins, they're not identical, they're fraternal. So it looked like the little girl that they were seeing could have been like a long lost triplet. So I was like, all right. Well, there was a young lady that we actually met through this group. She was hit one of the worst. She was recording a podcast, and all of a sudden one day she says, hey, we were recording a show, and we heard something that we thought we should probably send your way. I was like, all right. They caught an EVP while recording, fairly clear, of what sounded like a young girl, very tired. It just sounded like a little girl who was ready to go to bed, saying, Mommy. It sounded like there may have been something else there before, but that's what they caught. The theory at the time I was working with, because I had nothing else to go on, was that this was some sort of weird time travel thing. I mean, psychic ability always been fairly strong. I mean, I've been able to trace family stories going back to Salem witch trials at this point. Obviously, it's genetic. Something happens to where my kid's fairly strong, and something about that day just opened things up. So the woman that was recording the podcast, I had this idea that come on. It said, what if she was Mom? So what I did is I stalked her social media, found a more direct image of her face where she's looking more directly into the camera, ran it through one of those AI programs to basically merge our faces. Says it's one of the little gimmicks is like show what your kids would look like. So ran it through, added, a couple features here and there, wider eyes, a little bit more baby fat, to try to match what these people were seeing, because they were saying it looked like the little girl looked like she was about 6, but acted more like she was 3. Now, mind you, my first thought was, well, if this is my daughter, chances are she's going to have the same problem I have and look older than she actually is. It's like, then without telling this woman whose picture I took and used as the mother for the program, I sent her back what the AI put out. And she says, and I still have the voice message saved because what are the odds? Where she said, that's exactly who I saw. Fast forward to what I know now. Apparently, before I came to Earth, I was, in a way, married. They call it more of a soul bond because they managed to actually figure out, reincarnation cycles, how to manipulate bodies, things like that. That's a whole other video series right there. And that this particular race has a habit of interbreeding with local populations of planets they're about to colonize, so that way the younger generations have an easier time adapting. And it wasn't until we met Elena Denon and all this started coming together to where I was able to figure out that before coming to Earth, I guess technically still now, I was actually an officer with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. My old boss was Elena Denon's contact, Thorhan Iridian. I mean, before I even started admitting this part of the story, I reached out to Elena basically to verify, because I know she's had issues with people taking what she's taught and kind of twisting it to try to boost their own gain, but it just did not work out for him. I didn't want to have that sort of incident. What I did with Elena was I described, I saw, put it together like I had seen this being in some regression sessions that she actually recommended I try. It's like, by any chance, does this sound like somebody she knows? She's like, oh yeah, I met him a couple of times. It was about 20, 30 years ago that they last saw me. So I was like, mind you, when I got that email, I was riding around in my mom's passenger seat because I was borrowing her car so I could get to work. I damn near Fred Flintstone the car because that surprised me so much.
What?
It's been a point where, I mean, growing up, I've always had weird memories of stuff that I shouldn't know. Some of them I wouldn't later find out until later in life were actually memories of certain family members coming together. I remember seeing Chris looking like a teenager before I was born.
Did I have
Oh
hair?
wow.
It's up here.
Wavy hair.
There was a little bit of hair, I'll admit.
I used to have long wavy hair, believe it or not. I used to
And-
have long hair.
And I used to have a white man's version of an afro.
Mm.
Wow, there you go.
And to kind of go into what Drew was saying, I also remember seeing the logo for the group we were with, where we all met. The version of it that happened before everything blew up there.
Okay.
So, and I would see just images of this logo, like someone was trying to leave me a sticky note saying, "Remember this," years before we all actually met.
Wow.
Cool.
So that
Yeah,
is a
see-
very condensed version of it all.
It's a quick version.
I've seen and met his wife, believe it or not. Because it was
Yeah.
after we had a guest on, her name was Lisa Fry, and it was with the old company. We had her on, remember that, Dakota? We had her on, and then that's when it all started to click together for me.
I
It was
remember
like-
Lisa pasted a look together, didn't she? Lisa put a look together for you.
Yeah,
It was weird. It was weird because I had a kind of weird dream that night after she was on. It was like I was in this white room, and there was all these people, but I recognised them, but I didn't know who they were. And then after that, I used to do the astral traveling, but I was getting better and better and better at it. And then I ran into this little girl, and then a tall woman, and then Dakota showed me a picture, and it was exactly that picture.
Wow.
at
Wow.
least 25 people came forward saying that they've had run-ins with my star family. So
I like that term though, star family. I like that.
that's the best label I know for it.
So do they come down to help you with things? Are they helping you out to proceed on your journey? Are they helping everybody else around you out as well? That's what it sounds like, doesn't it? That not only you they're helping, but everybody that's got a part of your journey they're helping as well.
When it comes to the Starseed program, yes, there is a natural reincarnation cycle part of it, and there's karmic lessons behind it, but apparently in some cases where it's actually used as a bit of a loophole. for certain outside agencies. Basically, they said that you can't necessarily mess with certain people and beings unless the things they were dealing with did not originate from that world. So they figured out how to manipulate bodies down here to where they would be more compatible with souls from outside of the planet. Send people in through the Starseed program, or the Envoy is another term that gets used a lot, to basically kind of cheat the system, work it from within. And it turns out that because these people had some kind of attachment to me, it was obvious that what was affecting them was not entirely natural by our understanding of it. So they're able to come in, help either direct me to where I needed to be to help the situation, or take matters into their own hands. Until recently, there's actually been a bit of an update in that area that's kind of spooky when you consider what all it actually entails. But apparently there's been a few cases where we've actually abducted people. Yeah, I was like, there's been a lot of new updates since the last time I really got into
I was
this.
shocked at that one.
Do tell, Dakota, do tell.
I know.
Yeah.
Goodness. Have you got your own spaceship now?
Can I tell you we were parked there?
Can we go with you on a ride?
Yeah.
No, there's been certain cases where people have undergone some sort of supernatural attachment. For some reason, something about me would affect them right off the bat. Later,
I've seen it.
I still have the screen recording of the one particular incident where I talked about earlier, but I'm careful about who I show, because there's been people who's been so spooked by what they saw, they started seeing stuff, and I was like, keep this contained.
Huh.
Yeah,
Anyway,
definitely.
There was one gentleman who, at least he saw me one night. It's like, I told him that, hey, I saw you last night. I saw that you had some sort of blockage or something. It's like, for me, if I go to look at somebody and they have something wrong, there's been cases where certain spots in their body would show like this black dot, like it was some kind of marker telling me where the problem was. I mean, there's this one woman who was having issues to where she had to leave work. She had a pinched spine nerve that was getting to be so bad that she was getting dizzy, seeing double. I was able to pinpoint exactly where the pinched nerve was. Part of her spinal cord was actually being pinched by the disc itself, and was sticking out practically like a little ball right here. And it was also back when my grandfather was still alive, I could tell exactly where all the tumors were in his body because I could physically see them.
Wow.
And there's also been points growing up where I could tell a woman was pregnant because I could see the baby. You know, apparently, there's been a few cases where if a person actually needed some outside help, them knowing me was enough of a loophole to get them the help to at least break away the supernatural attachments from the case. They can come back, and within a couple of weeks, they would be better. There was one incident where I told this guy, hey, you probably need to go to the hospital. There's something building up towards your lower abdomen. He ended up going to the hospital, having a hernia. He swears up and down that the doctor that came in had my face.
Wow.
And it's just like, okay, now I know I've been abducting people. That's good to know.
Must be
What
clones
have
of
you been doing to them?
Yeah,
And it,
clones of you.
and I'll just say this: they weren't exactly clothed because I can
Right.
remember them being laid out on what
Mhm.
looks like an operating table.
Uh-huh.
And Elena, when I found my name from up there, she's like, "Oh yeah, he was my alter ego, for lack of a better word. Actually had a medic / science position.
Mm-hmm.
That's where if say like I helped with abduction cases, and Chris and I actually ended up finding a few of the kids I helped rescue back then. I would be one of the ones responsible for checking them out for any, implants, stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think my husband has an implant
Bad.
in him,
There's
I
usually
think.
quite common places you can find them. I've got one in my head. I've got one in my arm. You get them; they're quite common places. They leave little markings. You ever get little marks
I've
on your
got
arm?
one there. I don't know where it came from.
I've got one right there,
Yeah,
and
that's
there's a
funny. I'll
wee
say that because I got one
triangle.
right there too. Right
Have you?
there.
Right,
See,
that reminds us.
Uh-huh.
see,
Yeah.
everybody's here for a reason, and I bet there's
Yeah.
people in the chat that's got
I,
implants too.
I
I see.
definitely think we were all meant to meet. Maybe the reason's no fully been out there yet of why we all have met, especially some of the newer people that's coming into the community. But there's definitely a reason behind it. There's too much a coincidence with everybody, with their blood
Mhm.
group,
Yeah.
with the things that's happened to them, where they stay, anything. It all leads back to a connection of some kind.
Now,
What's that?
Dakota, with the way you're able, sorry, Chris, the way you're able to see stuff, I can look at somebody, not like their whole body and figure things out, but if they have any kind of like stopped up arteries, or like heart, any kind of a heart issue, that's the only things that I can pinpoint on somebody. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say, I was just going to say, what's his name? The paranormal hub world says goosebump. No, it's no goosebumps. See, if you look at your arm, some people can see them really clearly, and some people can't. It's like a wee triangle. You know how you get a straw and you hold it into your skin, and it leaves like a little indentation.
Oh,
Well, I've got 3 of them, so it's like it's very small, and it's right there, and it's like someone's held like something against it.
Right.
But it's always been there. It's always been there,
well,
and
my
that's how
husband,
the.
well, my
Mhm.
husband remembers when he was on the table and everything when he was taken. I tried to get him one time to talk about it on my channel, but he's like, no, I think he's worried about the repercussions from work that might
Mhm.
result.
There's a lot of people are now talking about their experiences. I think there was that kind of mentality a couple of years back, but more and more people are starting to share, and then they're finding that that same thing has happened to other people in the areas that it happened to them. So I would encourage him to share if he wants to share it, because you never know, somebody could have had that exact same experience where he did.
hmm Yep.
That's
So,
quite interesting. That like a spirit magnet. See with Dakota, it's different for me. I'm just like an aerial. I'm just like a mobile phone. I'm
Mhm.
open to any network.
See, maybe
And
that's the purpose you've got then. You've maybe to receive some sort of message in the future, whereas Dakota's maybe more of a hands-on. You're
why?
maybe just to receive
Why?
some
He's the
message.
boss.
Aye, well,
I'm just to hear the guys to take the phone calls and annoy him.
everybody's got a purpose. Uh-huh. I mean, some of us might not find out our purpose until years and years, you know?
yeah, talking about the ghost magnet, one of my, when I do paranormal investigations, one of the girls that I go with, she never wants to walk with me with a camera. She wants the other girl to switch with me because she says that all the spirits are attracted to me. So she kind of just wants to watch from afar and video from
Oh,
afar. She
I'd
don't
be
want to
arm
be
in arm
next
with
to
you.
me.
I'd be arm in arm with you. But
Yeah.
that's weird as well, because Dakota, you actually also see spirits and things, don't you?
Yeah, it's It's like, yes, there's certain people that can just be a weirdness magnet altogether. And just about anybody who sticks around me long enough can verify that, yes, some weird things happen around me. I'm probably one of the few people in the area that could say, get out of a speeding ticket because I was trying to chase down a UFO, which actually happened, by the way.
Is that unbelievable? They don't believe you.
No, it's just that they know who I am. My mom, she's a police dispatcher, so she goes to talk about some of the stuff I've done, and people are like, oh yeah, right. So he just does it as a hobby. He's like, no, it's gotten pretty serious. He's had people from like Discovery Plus reach out to him about some of the stuff, and they're like, what? It's like, yeah, he's gone Bigfoot hunting and actually found something, and actually had
I'm just seeing
university professors actually verify that he found stuff. And like Drew was saying, there's a complete shift that's going on right now to where I've even had active psychiatric hospitals, meaning they have patients inside who are reaching out because they have some sort of spiritual activity going on.
See,
And
not
it's
all
like,
these people
how
have
can I
mental problems.
exactly? And it's like, how do I move forward with a real investigation without setting something off if that were to move forward? Because chances are it was going to be attached to someone that was a patient there. I mean, I'll admit there's been times where I've been to therapy to deal with certain things, and once I find out that they were at least fans of the shows out there, I've opened up that I've had these experiences. A couple days later, our next session, they're like, Dakota, I need to ask you a few questions. Like, they showed up to you too, didn't they?
Wow.
And like I said, there was one incident where I was coming home from work one day, and all of a sudden, I go to turn the corner. My house literally 30 feet away from me. I look a mile down from me, and all of a sudden, there was a black triangle just hovering there. The second I see it, I realize, wait a sec, that seems a little too weird. I pound my foot onto the gas, speed down the road, going almost 90 miles an hour, trying to get closer to this thing. That's when I realized, oh, there's a cop right underneath that. See, the intersection that was a mile road for me. It's the main road that comes out of Nevada and Idaho. In Idaho, it's still illegal to smoke weed, so we watch all of the major highways and interstates for people coming in out of state because we know they're going to have something. So I start pumping my brakes as soon as I can because I do not want to have to hear. I knew that once the officer realized who I was, I would not hear the end of this story. But I even tracked down who the officer was. Because I wanted to ask him, because like I said, once I got to where the police cruiser was sitting, the black triangle was directly above him. It's like, I managed to dodge a ticket, but I got to ask because that's going to be one of the best witnesses to have. He goes that I go to ask, like, by the way, did you happen to see anything weird that day? He's like, no, why? Well, there was a UFO parked right above your cruiser. And he just looks at me like, what?
He's kidding.
It's like, yeah, I tried to stop and get photos, but by the time I could, it was gone. And so, like, so you were that guy that was speeding down the road.
You'd be like, yeah, that was me.
like, yeah, I was trying to chase a UFO, but once I told them who my mom was, I was like, I didn't want to necessarily deal with having to hear the end of that. And it's like, yeah, but this is also the same officer who's responded to calls of being a Bigfoot being spotted in the area, so he wasn't exactly close-minded.
Dakota actually had an encounter with Bigfoot. Did you know? Remember you telling me about that? It's quite interesting. That is.
So the first encounter took place. I was like in the 8th grade. We were just coming back from snow trip, I was just kind of watching out the window, things go by. We were in the mountains, and then all of a sudden, we passed this cave. And in the mouth of this cave, there's this big thing just standing there. It was dark fur. It had kind of a human face. The face actually resembled like an early caveman in a way. It was just sitting there. It had its hand to the top of the mouth of the cave, so just standing there watching it. I'm just like, what the heck was that? I look around and see if anybody else caught it. Of course, no. One of the teachers goes to look at me and says, Dakota, is everything all right? It's like, something was just sitting in the standing at a cave we were passing, watching us. They're like, oh, probably could have been Bigfoot. I was like, they were probably joking at the time. But I was like, it's like, well, the area's good for it. Years later, we go on a family camping trip. The campsite was actually not too far from the mouth of this cave. So I figured, I'm out here, might as well see if I can get anything. It's like almost within a week before the camping trip, someone brought a news clip to my attention. It's like, hey, I heard you're going to look for Bigfoot. Thought you might want to see this. It was a gentleman out of, I believe, North Carolina. He was a retired forensics investigator who often, had a patch of land where there was a bunch of woods, and he would actually try to capture evidence of Bigfoot. Trap cameras, set out bait, even try to set up traps where anything wanting to get to the food would have to physically move items, trigger the camera, and get a direct photo. Years and years and years, he was hardly getting anything. So one day he realized he ran out of bait, but all he had left was a chocolate bar. So he's like, all right, might as well toss that in there. Let's see what happens. All of a sudden, on a thermal camera, mind you, you see this shape just kind of move out. It's watching the camera. It clearly knows that it's being eyeballed. You see it poking its head around the tree. It kind of turns, looks where the chocolate bar is at. He's like trying to watch the camera. It's like, okay, is it safe? And you see what looked like
the power of Cadbury's.
a bright. It was a bright object. Bright, solid object. You see it's kind of swing out what looked like big monkey arms, grab the chocolate, and run off. Now, mind you, it was a solid object. If it was somebody in like a ghillie suit messing around, it'd be kind of splotchy, all that. This guy was a retired forensic investigator. He used to look at this type of stuff for a living. One of the most solid clips of what was believed to be Bigfoot. So I'm just like, all right, how does Bigfoot know about chocolate? So, knowing that I was going on this camping trip, I was in a good area. I made sure to grab some chocolate bars, test it for myself. Found a nice little tree stump, set it out. Made sure the ground was soft enough to where if anything heavy stepped in it, it would leave a footprint. I tried to make it to where I could just kind of sit from my tent with an old toy pair of, $50 toy pair of night vision goggles. I was a kid. That's all I had access to. And you're just kind of hoping to sit there and watch. As I'm setting everything up, I hear this rustle in the bushes behind me. I'm just like, all right. I just thought it was like maybe one of my younger cousins that was on the trip with us. Just sneaking up, seeing what I was doing. I look back behind me, and all of a sudden, it would step into the light just enough to where I could see it was this. It looked like a chimp standing there, and I'm just like, what? It was all black fur. It was almost the middle of the night, so it was just kind of watching, seeing what I was doing. I could see a little glimmer of the light reflecting in its eyes, and I'm just
Was
like,
it big or was it little?
it was maybe 4 foot max.
Oh, okay.
No, it was just a little guy. Like I said, I thought it was honestly one of my younger cousins trying to sneak up on me.
Well, they've got to grow
So-
too, haven't they?
I was just like looking back, and I'm just like, the second I realized, wait a sec, I jerked. It sees me jerked, and it just darts off. Mind you, this thing was covered in dark fur. It was almost the middle of the night. It was fast. Ain't no way I was gonna catch it on foot.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did,
I don't think you would.
if I did, there may have been some very negative repercussions if I tried anything. So I was like, I ran. Second I lost it, I was like, son of a bitch. Like, a couple of my uncles like, Dakota, what the hell just happened? It's like, I thought I just saw some. I was setting up a Bigfoot trap and something was sneaking up on me. It's like, oh, it was probably a dog or a wolf or something. It's like, no, this looked like a little kid covered in fur. It's like, all right, whatever.
That's that. They don't believe.
Then the next morning, I pass out, and so while I was sitting there waiting, the next morning, I go to check. The chocolate's gone, and there's a print left behind. I had some casting material, collected the sample, protected it as much as I could. And my uncles were like, how in the hell? Because we're all bigger guys.
Yeah.
This thing was just by its foot size. It had one massive, giant, big toe kind of set back, like down here. Other toe sticking right there. It's like, how in the hell did you get this? Did you fit? They're like, Dakota, did you make this up? It's like, no. I'm all excited. I'm excited. Then on the show, we actually invite Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who's actually a university professor here, well known for studying Bigfoot. I lost the cast in a move, but I still had photos. And this would be the type of man. He actually has machines that, if anybody believes they've caught a Bigfoot casting like that, he can actually run it through this machine. It'll go through the scans to see it and help identify what it is. Because there's been some cases where certain bears' feet have actually been kind of mangled because of whatever situation they meet. Maybe they just climb trees or whatever, where bears can actually develop what looks like big human feet. I show him that, and he's like, you know what, we ought to meet, because I think you have something there. I was like, whoo. Then actually not too long ago, my mom, she goes to tell me, it's like, you might want to drive out this way if you want to go looking for Bigfoot. It's like, why? Someone just called in one stalking the local farm. So I was like, oh, good to know. Where was this?
See, Mike always spoke about them as well. They're not. It's not as far-fetched as people think. Mike the Naked Bigfoot always spoke about Bigfoot. you know,
he's an infestation of them, but he was living amongst them. I mean, the mountains run about Mike, but it was Dairney went into the mountains at night, and there was the apple tree that
they all
he couldn't identify, and I always found that strange. It was he sent me pictures of the apples, and I could never identify them. And near could he, and
it was like some sort of weird crab apple, wasn't it?
Yeah,
he said they weren't tasty at all. They could not. Humans couldn't eat them. They're just too sour.
But he was a botanist. He was right into plants. He trained in university and everything. And I didn't know this. He was actually a lecturer at university. And he could not figure out what what those apples were, but they would disappear all one day, and they would
Yeah.
just disappear. And I think that was maybe Bigfoot was coming to take them away. I think they're the special purpose.
No, I
Well,
definitely.
yeah,
as
Mike
well.
shared with us that his family would always talk about this one particular apple tree. Is like, whatever you do not mess with that tree.
Do
What
not
does he
knock
go
it
and do?
down.
He messes with the tree. I was like, thankfully, where I'm at, Sasquatch population doesn't exactly have any reputation for attacking. Besides, there's been a couple of cases where people have had large rocks thrown at them. It's like, okay, ain't no way a bear's lifting that up.
Yeah.
But
and also
over where
you
Mike
notice,
lives, they tend to be a bit more violent.
You also seen Nessie as well, don't you? Didn't you?
You see it coming out the water.
Yep.
Did you know that, sister? You also seen Nessie when he came to Scotland.
Actually,
An
the Nessie,
American.
it was like, I was on vacation through Scotland. Main reason I went was I knew one of our tour stops was Loch Ness, and that's something I've always wanted to check out. While I was there, my eyes did not leave that water. I was damned and determined to get something. So we go on a little ferry boat ride. They have sonar equipped, just kind of monitor it, but nothing was showing up there. I was still watching the water. I had ultraviolet glasses on that's supposed to help, that are used by fishers to kind of help see under the surface of the water a little better. Nothing happened. We go over to Urquhart Castle, where a lot of sightings actually take place, and they believe that there's some sort of hiding spot Nessie likes to stick around there. I mean, no reason why a lot of sightings happen at this particular spot. So I'm watching the water. All of a sudden, I start seeing these black shapes moving through the water, and they're huge. This kind of a black speedboat goes by with a bunch of people on it, goes in front of one of these dark shapes in the water, and all of a sudden, the back end of this thing just comes out of the water like this, like it was trying to avoid being hit. But if you got something that's 20, 30 feet long that's trying to come to an abrupt stop, it's not going to stop on a dime. Part of it comes out of the water. I freak out. I start snapping photos, because it started matching some of the better descriptions of some sort of aquatic being in the water. I didn't catch anything directly of what I saw. I had plenty of stuff where you could see kind of a large black shape moving around in the water trying to hide. It was eyeballing people but staying out of sight. And I was like, and then they go to ask us, like, so did anybody catch proof of Nessie? And I'm just sitting there with my cameras like, let me get back to you.
Not sure yet.
I was looking through the camera. I didn't have a computer to look through everything properly, and I'm just like, I got something.
Aye,
Then actually about a year later, I get this email from the Loch Ness Registry saying, hey, Dakota, there's a group here that wants to reach out to you about your sighting. They said they're working on a documentary. I knew right about that time they were actually doing DNA tests on Loch Ness to try to figure out what it was. Basically, the idea is if something's in that water, it's going to leave a mark. So I was like, do you know if they have something to do with the DNA tests? It's like, I was like, send them my way. I have no problem with that, but do you know if that's what it is? It's like, well, I sent them your information. They didn't really mention anything about the DNA tests. Good luck. Apparently, they had found the casting lady that was putting together this stuff for this episode. She wasn't exactly paying attention to the news article she found me on, and she wanted to get permission to use a particular clip. It was like, hey, Dakota, we heard about your sighting through this and wanted to know if this footage was yours, and if so, we could use it. So they actually mentioned that they were working on a program for National Geographic, and I'm just like, no, that wasn't my footage, but here's what I do have. I was like, when was I going to get a shot like that again?
I know. It's so lucky, isn't it?
So then they sent me the paperwork saying, oh, if we decide to use your footage, that you give us the right to do that. And I'm just like signing away.
Take it quick.
So it's like, yeah, I ended up going on National Geographic for a series called Drain the Oceans. It was a second season in. They talk about Loch Ness. About roughly the 5-minute mark, you see me using some of the stuff I took while I was on vacation.
Aye.
Cool.
And just think, Drew, when we go to the Heelans and we go to Loch Ness, I'm going to send you and Alan out, Drew, in a rowing boat.
Oh, we're going in the boat.
Find the monster.
We'll go out there and sit overnight.
I can't swim, so
You
there's no
look
point
at
in
that.
doing it. You'll be fine, Alan will look after you.
Right, okay.
Why does everybody else got to do the hard work there, Chris?
I know, that's terrible, isn't it?
I'll be ready with the camera. Wait.
Okay, you better catch it. We'll tease it out the water and you quickly get a big photo, right?
It's like, don't forget, Chris, I may have had a spiritual assist that day, because on the plane rides back over, I found out that roughly about the same time I had my sighting, my great-grandmother actually passed away while I was on that trip. And if I did the math right, it would have been roughly about the same time I was at Loch Ness. So if that was you, Grandma, thank you.
Wow. But you never know if that is how it works. That's what intrigues me. I mean, it could really obviously work like that. You never know.
Actually, I may have had something that proves that if you're lucky enough, sometimes your dead relatives will try to help you out.
Yeah,
And
I believe that.
I actually had something come up, and Chris, I actually sent you the trailer for this. This was before we all met. Right as COVID lockdowns were starting, I mean, the exact weekend COVID lockdowns were starting where I'm at, I was actually in a town about 2 hours away from me filming for a TV show.
Right.
It's like, it was kind of a mockumentary series where they would take old B movies and turn them into like paranormal investigations. And they wanted to try to get someone who was actually into ghost hunting to kind of add a layer of legitimacy to it.
Mm-hmm.
What they didn't expect was that the ghost hunter they ended up getting could actually get the spirits to play along.
Okay, that's good.
Because the investigation was into a movie called The Wasp Woman.
All right.
Basically, the story that was set up is that we were a team trying to figure out what happened in a lab. They were messing around with beauty products, ended up leading to some sort of slaughter. It was kind of a last resort to bring in ghost hunters to try to figure out what happened, was the story that it's going with. And as I'm listening to kind of the footage we caught, I would hear what sounded like my grandfather talking to someone, saying, "Oh yeah, that's my grandson. It's okay. You can talk to him." I even grabbed my younger sister, was like, "Come here, I need you to listen to something." And she goes to listen to it and was like, "Is that Grandpa?" Mind you, he was dead for about 8 years, so... Then there was also another clip where somebody clearly says, "Wasp Woman."
Right.
So we actually got the spirits to play for the movie.
Brilliant.
That's kind of a confirmation.
Yeah, definitely is.
I was like, yeah, they were playing along, and that program's actually being submitted into film festivals, so it'll actually be coming out soon. The second I know something, you'll know something. So
there you go. Amazing.
Hey Dakota, do you know somebody? You have a spirit behind you right now. You had it the other day when I was watching you also on one of your shows. Do you feel that spirit, or you just automatically know that they come and go behind you all the time?
I should have put out my K2, but I really need to change the batteries in that damn thing.
That thing's worn out.
I
That
know.
thing-
Remember the way it used to go off all the
Oh my
time?
god.
Uh,
Was it-
It's just
Okay.
amazing to look back at the way we all met and just the way that everything's placed together. I mean, it has been a roller coaster, but it's amazing when you see how far everybody's came, especially at figuring out their journeys. It's amazing.
yeah.
My husband, when he was little and he still lived at home, he was outside on his bicycle and he saw a UFO real close where he could clearly see it. He started to take off on his bicycle to chase it down, and his mother yelled at him, "You can't catch it!" Because he thought he could catch it running on his bicycle. He thought he could just ride his bike and catch it.
Good on you, Lee. That's what.
I can see him the new what's that film E.T.
E.T.
And the bike-
Yeah.
Open the
Yeah.
sky.
I can fly.
E.T. phone home.
Yeah, his mother was like, "You can't catch it."
Well done, Lee. Have you got any questions, guys, in the chat?
It's like, well, probably something that's happened for the first time. People are actually wanting Dakota to shut up and Chris to actually tell something.
No, I'm sitting here in shock.
I was like, that's got to be the 1st time I've ever seen that.
I'm sitting here and I'm like, my God, this guy can't stop talking. What's happened? Is
Now you know how I feel.
That's because we've got the two yous in a jar.
Yeah, okay, that's my cue. Everybody, if you watched me on the when I was with Chris and he was
Got
saying,
the
"Don't put
headphones
me
here."
in a jar." Okay, then of course he has to have his sidekick with him, so we got him.
Yeah.
That's hard, dude. It's not a working, guys. There's nothing in it. I couldn't help myself. Drew's not all innocent. She helped me get the pictures.
Hey, it's all coming in new. It's stop. It's all
That's
coming in
right.
new.
But I love it because it caught him with his hand. Look.
The camera, Chris, it makes him almost look like a penis, but all right.
The lid's not on. The lid's not on them yet.
Oh my God.
I'm so glad you all have a good sense of humor because I was so worried. I didn't want to make you mad, but
That
I
jar's too
laughed.
big for Dakota. Yeah.
I laughed for days. Yeah, I have to show him one more time. He said, "Don't put me in a jar." And his friend has to be there in the back of
Dakota looks like he's that's Dakota's up close actually. That's where did you get that photo for? It looks like
I sent him a screenshot. I took a screenshot and sent it.
it looks like he's doing something that he shouldn't be. He's like,
Look at Chrissy. Don't put me in a
Yeah,
jar.
we're gonna win a jar. I kept rewinding the video, and I kept trying to get just the exact picture. I had to do it like 10 times to get the right one. Thanks, guys, for having such a good sense of humor.
that's fine. That's fine. You should put something in it for Dakota. You should put
That's
some
funny.
like, strange herbs in that. He'll wake up in the morning with a set of horns.
Oh, did you get your spell that she done? The working that she done to show you how to grow hair?
Aye, did I watch that actually? I found
We'll
that
send
very,
you the
very
link to
interesting.
the formula.
You need to
But no,
munch-
Chris is real sensitive with his skin. He has to do a test first to make sure that it
Yes.
doesn't affect his skin
Yes,
since
I'll
he's so
admit I
sensitive.
use beauty products.
It should fit nicely in your shea butter, honestly.
You go to Dakota, just get somebody to massage that over your bald head for you, you know.
But you gotta do that chant though, the chant that I put on the video. You have to
Your
do
head
the
will
chant.
be Your head.
Definitely
Hey,
do
what
the
if you accidentally mispronounce it? Your head will grow. Your head, you'll wake up with a big lump.
same.
This head, you have to say this head will grow.
I bet,
No.
I better not give people in the chat ideas. They'll not be using it in their head. They'll be using it in other places.
Oh God,
Oh, crap.
their ears.
Do like that.
Everybody in the chat, if you did not watch the video, so you can catch up and know what out with this,
We're talking
watch
about.
the video where Chris and Drew had me on Chris's channel, and make sure you watch it, and you'll know where I
Yeah.
got that picture from.
Definitely watch it, guys. Remember,
I'll be making a
subscribe to each
gallery
other
up
as
tonight.
well.
Ugh.
Subscribe to each other in the chat, guys. Roll each
Yeah,
other's
subscribe to
bones.
everybody. If y'all have not, Dakota, I can make you blue if you just put like hi or something in the chat, and I can blue so they can just click on it and subscribe to you if they.
Yeah.
So if
Have you
anybody
commented,
else,
All
Have
right.
you commented?
else,
Dakota will be making that brew up tonight, but he'll not be using it in his head.
because I think everybody else in here is blue. I think I got
I'll
them
just
all.
put hey, see if I'm in the chat. I've got a wee spanner too.
Hobbs says, Hobbs
that?
got a question. Mystical Sis, please tell me, is there a slight mist to the right of that black spider toy, please, or am I seeing things? Your toy above you.
Oh, up here? Yeah, that was from Halloween. My husband bought me, and I liked it so much I put it up there. When you turn it on, it's like.
I think it keeps being a mist. Yeah, I see that as well at the end of the shelving unit. Yeah, I see what you're talking about.
Oh, I
There
don't
it
know.
says, there's Phoenix says Dakota's not blue, bald and bonkers.
Oh no, he's not
Okay.
blue yet.
We're
He needs to
going
get
to
his wee
get him
spanner
blue.
out.
As moderator.
I've got a wee blue spanner.
Yeah.
Okay, he is now, so anybody can click on it. That way
Remember,
they-
guys, the boys have got a show and they go out and podcast as well on all the major platforms, and they've also got their own website where you can join up on Golden Bonkers and things. If you need help, they're also there to help you. If you're struggling with anything such as your spirituality, maybe ghosts, anything, they're always willing to take into consideration and help you out. So definitely go check out their website as well, guys.
We've actually got a Patreon now, and it's only $1 a month. Isn't that right, Dakota?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
only $1 a month, which is actually surprising because I didn't think you could set it up for that.
That's good.
Dakota, did you want to put something else and say, oh, so I'll make sure you're blue? I put you blue. We want to make sure it comes out.
Put your other channel up as well, Dakota. Dakota has also got his own channel, Specialist of the Strange, that he does on his own.
All right. Well, get something here real quick.
He does gaming videos and they're awfully good. If
Yeah.
you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely, Hub. Thank you for that, brother.
All right. Like, there's our
Yep,
flow
it's
code
blue.
page there. They'll have all of our links all in one spot, so it's a lot easier to find everything. So I'm not having to post all 100 links
Yeah,
at
that's
once.
easy, isn't it?
Okay, and this should stay on when the live ends because I did Drew what you told me to Drew and on the
You find
comments.
it?
Yeah,
Right.
to put on there to keep or whatever it said. So I made sure I clicked on it, so that should stay in there when we
Brilliant.
stop the live, right? It'll stay there.
Yeah, that'll stay there then.
Okay. Okay, good. Good. Anybody got any questions for him while we're here? For any of them? Anything at all?
What was
Dakota, did you say how many children you had from?
Your Star family.
Yeah, from your start.
Yeah.
We're up to
I couldn't
3
think of the
now.
word.
Oh, is it 3 now? Wow.
Nice, been using your lotion.
It's like
Wow.
it's 2 girls and a boy.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
2 girls and a boy. Wow. So do you have pictures of them or anything? Well, they're kids, so you don't want to put them on YouTube anyway.
Well,
But I mean, you personally, do you have pictures?
well, that's the thing. since the last time we actually had Elena on, there's been people who've been asking us like, okay, how come you guys have all these stories? Why can't you get pictures? It's like, well, when they come, technology starts to bug out. I mean, one of the tricks I've actually started using is that, and it really depends on whether or not the cats shut up throughout the night, whether if it works. But if anybody thinks that they have some sort of abduction situation going and want to try to get some sort of physical proof, one thing I've been doing is using a sleep talking app that's supposed to help record throughout the night. And there's actually been quite a few recordings that I still need to go through lately where I've caught my wife's voice as well as my kids on tape. But as far as being able to take physical photos and videos, that gets difficult because, well, just the way their ships work messes up our technology, and that's kind of how you know when things are about to happen.
That could be one of the big new things that's going to be sorted out. I mean, I know that Elena was talking about when they met up at the Blue Ridge Mountains, there was like an exchange in new technology. So these could be some of the new technologies that will come out. I mean, you never know. The clearer communication and proof that they're here, you never know.
Yeah, that particular base that her contact went to actually is not too far from Mike's place.
Right.
The second she said Blue Ridge Mountains, I was like, wait the fuck a minute, I know Mike was there.
Yeah.
All together.
But I do technically have photos. Like I said, I had to use AI in order to make it happen. In order to get some sort of rendering going. And like I said several times, and people think I'm morbid when I put it like this, but had certain individuals not been wearing glasses, the pictures were apparently accurate enough to where their eyes damn near popped out of their skulls from shock. So I was like, just bring it up here.
I remember the first time I seen it, and I thought, that's exactly what your pictures look like.
It's like, I actually have a little screen prop popped up if you guys want to see the original photo that started it up.
I just add it to the screen, sis. You just add it like a person.
Wow, how beautiful. And look at the big eyes, just like a starseed would have the big eyes. Beautiful.
Yeah, and going back to when Chris was saying that our friend Lisa Fry was the one to kind of point us in the right direction. I brought up this photo because I was still trying to sort out what was going on, and I figured, what the heck, nothing else was working out for me. So I showed her this photo. She goes, she looks Pleiadian.
She does look Pleiadian.
Yeah, with the eyes and the hair and the skin color and everything. She's beautiful.
Then later on in that interview,
it's like you can see right through her eyes.
Yeah, they had that effect on you. But then later on in that interview, Lisa goes to bring up, it's like, yeah, the Pleiadians tend to be very sexual. What?
That's why you've got 3 kids now.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why all his hair's fell out. That's why all his hair fell out.
So do they grow quicker than our normal kids then, Dakota? Or is it just because of the difference in the light years and things? Is that why they grow quicker?
I'm still trying to figure that part out.
Right.
Oh, that reminds me to, don't let me interrupt you, Dakota. Keep that thought in mind, and then you can answer this one too with, like, Elena going from place to place, planet to planet. Does she get younger or older depending on where she's at in the galaxy and the universe?
I know, That's weird. I think of things like that as well.
And I'll just say this. If you think that dealing with time zones, when, say, like, we're doing shows like this is rough, you got to realize time in itself, it's not that it doesn't exist like people try to say. It does exist. It's just that linear time doesn't really come into a factor until you're in a planet's gravitational pull.
Right.
That's
Right.
what causes it. As far as why all of a sudden, say like my son, I didn't find out about him until like March of 2021,
Mhm.
and I can even tell you that instant. But so when I saw that, their mother was in what looked like a hospital bed. My daughter was sitting there looking about the same age I've always seen her. Looks at me and says, "Daddy, come meet my new baby brother." Then the woman's holding a newborn baby. Now all of a sudden, and I figured out that some of the lights that all of a sudden start moving on their own were actually being piloted by my son.
Right.
Almost 2 years later, he's already looking like he's in his 20s. Like, how the heck is that working out?
I know. That's crazy, isn't
So
it?
technically, yes, it does affect your age, but it also depends on where she goes, the type of places she visits. I mean, not too long ago, NASA actually did an experiment with twins, where one stayed on Earth, one went into space, and the one that actually went into space technically became a few minutes older during their time up there.
That's right.
Wow.
Is
So
it no?
it's-
Is it no? Is it no? Right, let me get this right now. The faster you go, the slower time gets. Am I right
From your
here?
perception,
You
yes.
can say that, uh-huh.
So if you're going at the speed of light, an hour will pass for you, but 100 years will pass on Earth. Is that how it works?
Something like that, I think.
In a way.
Yeah. Right.
In a way,
So-
but
Well,
there's a lot more to it, and that's why when it comes to like the James Webb telescope, why aren't we just seeing a bunch of telescopes looking back at us? We're say like the Pleiades, they're supposed to be like 440 light years away without any other external influence. Technically, if they were looking at us, they would be seeing us in the 1600s. So it gets kind of difficult when it comes to this type of thing.
Yeah,
don't
it's
they
not-
move just, it takes seconds to get from, like, through the portals, just seconds from one place to the other?
Certain species actually have craft that can make
Oh yeah.
that kind of jump within 20 minutes.
Oh.
It's like it
Wow.
said that Earth's secret space programs, we have craft that can get from here to Mars at the farthest points in Earth's and Mars orbits within 90 minutes.
Right.
Wow.
So imagine traveling from Earth to Mars in say 15 minutes, something like that.
That's just crazy, isn't it?
Whereas
Wow.
it takes,
It's-
well, how long does it take with a conventional rocket? Was it something like 18 months or something like that? Or is it 12
Right,
months? Something
so
like that?
close to it, uh-huh. 18
Well,
months, I think.
It goes to 18 months. Elon's trying to shorten that trip, and let's just look at the fact that all these billionaires with space programs are trying to put together programs to get everybody off of Earth as soon as possible. So,
Yeah.
what do they know?
And no,
Come in.
what do they know that we don't know? Is my question and all, as well.
To be honest with you, instead of spending all that money to go to Mars, they would be better spending the money on Earth to fix it.
Exactly. Instead of having to disappear to Mars to get away from it.
Aye. I know it's a good idea in case there's like a nuclear war or there's an asteroid strike or something like that, but
I don't think they would let that happen.
Oh, no.
Because
No,
I mean-
never allow that to happen.
I don't think so. No.
No, the ones that would, the negative beings that everybody freaks out about, they're no longer around.
Yeah.
they've already
They've been kicked
already
out.
sent them on their way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the Hive Queen for the Greys, she's dead, and they're trying to recover now. All the negative ones, they're gone. So within the next couple of years, we're going to start seeing some really interesting things happen.
I think it's already started. I mean, I think right now it's already started. Maybe it's just a gentle opening, but it's definitely something's changed. Something's definitely changed.
Don't get me wrong, they might not allow nuclear weapons to get used, but there's
Uh-huh.
still bad things can happen. I mean, there still can be like cyber attacks that shut down the entire grid.
Oh
there
yeah.
could be things, really terrorist attacks, and really bad things could happen. Yeah, I mean, we can still go to war. We can still have a third world war without using nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I still think we've got a wee while yet before they're here in force. I think there's things that we
You have
must.
to all stay positive and realise that they're not here to harm us, they're here to help us.
Yeah.
And stop thinking that because it's different that it means that they're bad. Different doesn't mean bad, it just means different. So
Yeah,
keep a
look at me and
positive
Drew.
mind.
We're different.
Mhm.
Now, Dakota, I have a question for you. You're very knowledgeable in the alien situation, and yet you do paranormal stuff. And because since I can see spirits and stuff, some of the spirits I see them as aliens. Some of the shadows I see them as aliens, not as what some people would just call spirits here. Would you say that some of them are aliens, like some of the shadows and stuff we see are actually aliens, or no?
The best way I know to describe it, and it's why I keep trying to tell people, don't fall into the trap thinking you know everything, because there's things about to happen. I mean, let's face it, chaos of the last 3 years alone should prove that nothing's off the table anymore.
Yeah.
But there's several insiders who have come forward saying that those reports you hear of, things moving by themselves, shadow apparitions, not all of them are the deceased still walking among us. That's alien technology getting turned on and people being screwed with in some cases.
Yeah.
When it comes to that kind of perception, the human mind is a lot like old school TVs where everything like VCR and gaming consoles had to be brought through channel 3 in order to get it to work. That's the best way I know to describe it. I'm going to have to think of something new to be able to explain to the younger generation that didn't have to deal with that type of stuff. But
So what's a VCR?
Yeah, exactly. That's the first question they'll ask.
what's channel 3?
Yeah.
Oh God.
What?
I know.
I've got a cine camera in the cupboard. I've got
What's
in my
a
closet,
cine camera?
You know, there is the extraterrestrials out there that are just light. Dakota can tell you more about. He kens more about them. They're just like, I think some of them don't come from a different reality. You've got to understand there's different realities, like different dimensions, and a lot of them were affected. A lot of them were affected when we started testing nuclear weapons, and a lot of them have came through. I'll let Dakota explain this because he's better at explaining these kind of entities.
Poor Dakota, he's answered
But he
everything.
has. He's good.
Yeah,
at
no,
asking.
it's so weird that I'm the one doing most of the talking. This is,
I know.
it's like we've entered the Twilight Zone here.
I know. Do not adjust your laptop.
No, like Chris said, it was a major spike when we started messing around with nukes, and it's actually widely speculated that the Roswell crash, something about us testing nukes messed with that particular craft, and that's why it went down in the first place.
Right.
You also got to realize a lot of people speculate that from the sole survivor of the crash, the occupants of that ship were basically teenagers going out on a joyride, and that happened.
Right.
And there's been several times. Yes, spirits, ETs, they have a concept of the afterlife. They would have to be able to work the Starseed program the way they do. I mean, every culture, even in outer space, has some sort of concept of the afterlife. I mean, there's been incidents where my late grandfather, even on the day that he died, started interacting with my daughter.
Oh.
Yeah.
It was like, my daughter, she actually showed up one day, the day that my grandfather was passing away, because she didn't like seeing her dad like that. So she actually went to go into the room where everybody was gathering around because he was on his last breath of life. Then all of a sudden, My grandfather looks at her directly and says, "You should probably get that girl out of here."
Oh, wow.
That my daughter and I were both kind of shocked that happened.
Wow. So he's seen her.
Oh, it gets better. I was actually in Paris several years later. We were on the riverboat cruise that they do close to the Eiffel Tower. This was shortly after. It's like when I went to Paris, it was like a couple weeks after the Brussels bombing. When I first got there, they had the Eiffel Tower lit up in the colors of the Belgium flag.
Right.
We got to Paris. We were on this riverboat cruise. It started to rain a little bit, so everybody hid in the lower deck to get out of the elements. I just stayed topside, had it all to myself, was kind of zoning out, watching the Eiffel Tower. Then all of a sudden, I feel this tap on my shoulder. Now, I'm a bigger guy. I thought somebody was just trying to take a picture, and I was just standing in the way. So I just was like, oh, sorry. Second, I had to take a double take because the person tapping on my shoulder was my grandfather.
Oh.
Then standing right next to him was my daughter.
Wow.
It's like I've physically seen spirits and ETs start interacting, so they know about each other.
Oh yeah.
Well, technically, they're family. Even though it's a different type of family, they're still connected. So that's reassuring that they're actually, you can mingle with them in the afterlife as well.
I
I mean, what happens when an alien dies? Do they die as well?
That's quite interesting you say that. See, I'll tell you my perspective, right? And I'll let Dakota answer the one about what happens when an alien dies.
Right.
See when they take me and I do my out of body thing, right? They've taken me to the afterlife,
Right.
but they cannot follow you beyond a certain point. They've told me this. They've told me that a million times. That they've took me to a beautiful. Imagine the most beautiful scene you've ever seen, like hills and mountains, right? With meadows of flowers, and you wake up smelling them, right?
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
And in the distance, there's like a beautiful city. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, you'll look behind you and you'll see the extraterrestrial standing there, and you'll be like, "I'm sorry, I can't come any further." But you can't go any further.
Right.
But you can see people in the distance, and that's your loved ones because they can see you because they'll wave at you.
Right.
And they do that sometimes for you. They've done it 3 times with me, and they say that's a pre-present for you to make you feel better.
Oh, wow.
And they do that, and it's weird because you can't come. You can't go to them. He says it's not your
Right.
time yet. You cannot cross that boundary.
Yeah, glimpse into it. Uh-huh.
They can walk up to the door, open the door, but cannot pass beyond like the mark in the floor kind of thing, right? The exit into their world. Now I'll hand over to Dakota because it's quite interesting. This.
Oh.
There's different sets of circumstances, but they do have such an understanding when it comes to the afterlife that if someone, say like one of their soldiers dies in battle, there's actually a window of time they can retrieve the soul and put it into a new body.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right.
If they don't make it within that window, they can still figure out how to track them down. It's a lot like that film Jupiter Ascending in a way.
Yeah.
It's like it's like Mila Kunis, Channing Tatum. Watch it. A lot of the concept that you talk about in that film are actually fairly accurate about how this stuff kind of works.
Right.
But if it's also a situation, say like myself, just as an example, if I go to die, there's been points where I've had instances where they've had to pull me out of the afterlife.
Right.
There was an incident when I was like 11 years old. I was actually going into renal failure to my family that was helping me get to the hospital, I was passing out from the pain. Little did they realize I was also visiting some of our dead relatives who would look at me like, seeing me kind of bouncing back and forth between worlds, like, how the hell are you doing that? But
Wow.
when it actually comes to my time and that silver cord gets cut from this body, I'll just bounce back to the one I had before my alien body, because it's not that I died and came here. It's like, you know, the Avatar movies with the really tall blue people?
Mhm.
They show that they essentially put people into these pods, you know, put them into induce a coma, transfer their consciousness to another body.
Right.
It's a
Right.
lot like that.
Right.
If I go to
That makes
die,
a bit more
I just go
sense.
back to my other body.
Right.
But which comes to the interesting part when it comes to my kids is like, okay, did I have these kids beforehand and they just showed up? Or is it because they look like me, obviously they have my DNA, so that could very well be why my grandfather was able to interact with them like he has been.
That connection.
It's like that, you know, we're all fractals of our bloodlines soul. The soul apparently imprints on the physical DNA, and that's why they actually can go to such lengths to alter someone's DNA throughout several generations to make them more compatible for spirit types, a lot like blood types.
Mhm.
So when you think about it, the concept of reincarnation, having memories of, you know, like past lives or even from family members, kind of sounds like situations of organ transplant where the transplant patients all of a sudden start seeing memories and getting the talents of their donors.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's well documented enough to where it's like they know that it happens, they're just not exactly sure how it happens. This is
Mhm.
also not exactly ethical for them to start experimenting.
Well,
Yeah.
It's
what
like
would you say?
it really depends on individual circumstances, but yes, they do have a concept of the afterlife. There is reincarnation cycles. There's some of them that figured out how to transfer consciousness, say like the Anunnaki as an example, where they have spare clone bodies waiting on hand if something happens to them.
Right.
And some of that, one of the main rules when it comes to, say, like the Galactic Federation is that you have to share your tech with everybody else.
Mhm.
So when that day comes and they start showing themselves in force, we're first going to start seeing the ones that look the most like us, which
Yeah.
just so happens to be my wife and kids. So I still got to figure out how to explain to my mother, yeah, don't worry about the alien invasion. That's your grandkids.
See that?
Yeah.
That's what we were actually. That's weird
Yeah.
that because we were actually talking about that before Dakota
Talk
and Drew
about
come
knowing
in.
people in higher places.
We were actually when we Mystical. We were actually talking about that because before Drew and Dakota come in, you were going on about the Chinese balloons stuff and that. And I says that's just distraction, and everybody on the internet and everybody on the TikTok and all that, they all think it's an alien invasion. It's not. It's a distraction. Like,
Mhm.
you think these creatures are going to fly all this distance to come to Earth, highly advanced. Some of them are millions of years advanced to be shot down with one missile.
I know, and why would they look like that?
Mhm.
That's what I don't get. Why do they honestly think they would look like that when they've been flying across the screen on like these big black super fast things and silver things and stealth things? Why would they look like a weather balloon or whatever it looks like, spy balloon?
Well,
Stupid.
certain species actually do have ball-shaped craft.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's like, if anybody hasn't read Elena's books, I highly recommend to do so
Oh, yeah.
because she goes
I'm
into
going to
amazing detail. And there's been actually several situations where I've come across a contactee situation, and I would immediately run to Elena's books to try to figure out what kind of species that was because she has that much detail on them.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's like, as far as the balloon situation, you can go on to the FBI vaults, readily accessible documents on UFOs. One of the very first pages that will come up, they will say that these beings, they do not mean to cause any harm, but if we try to start a fight, we'll lose.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, imagine we have no technology that's even comparable to what they have.
It's like, but they've been giving us technology. It's like, really? Would you give a volatile species some of the weapons that they have? Would you give a species that has been as violent as us weapons that could cause you problems down the line? No. They're going to be giving us the equivalent of what a parent might give to a small child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to give us hand-me-downs.
Yes.
Exactly. We can't be trusted with anything that's going to be, to be honest. Man's got a way of destroying things.
The technology they're giving us is like what they've already not even used for 200, 300, 400 years or thousands of years, however way you want to look at it.
Probably retired.
Yeah. Who wants to answer that question that's on the
hubs?
Yeah. Who wants to answer it?
We were talking about, what happens to aliens when they die, and I was saying that they actually know how to bring souls back.
Right.
When you think about it, that could very well be a basis of, our understanding of necromancy could actually be like the most basic understanding of how they know it. So it could very well be a connection. It's like everybody freaks out. It's like, oh, talking to the dead, that's necromancy, that's a sin. It's like, no, that's because stupid people don't realize what they're doing and call out something that's not so friendly.
No. It's like when a child finds a Ouija board or a spirit board or whatever you want to call it, and decides to go into a graveyard or go into their cell and decide to contact a demon, for instance, and starts talking to that demon or whatever it is, and then leaves the door open, and then they've got an attachment the rest of their life. Unless they do something with that.
Exactly,
On this one here where it says, I've always been told that movies were a way for us to be introduced or desensitized to the alien, to mankind interactions that occur. You always say when you watch, I don't even watch TV anymore, I watch movies anymore, because the way that I would see it is like 75% of it was true, but they're passing it off as not real just because that's how they're getting the kind of information that they're putting out on the movies. But I only watch TV no more.
As I'm about to say, I'm going to use Dakota. I'm going to say to Dakota again here. A lot of the aliens that you see in movies and stuff are actually real extraterrestrials. Dakota, would you like to take it?
There you go, Dakota. Take the floor.
Just make a statement and you answer it.
Well, it is true that they've been utilizing the media to slowly kind of introduce the concept of ETs to the public, because let's face it, there's been a number of times where people say they see something on TV. It's like, yeah, that's technically how it works, but there's more to it. Anyway, this actually has a genuine start with the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That film, the producers behind that film were actually given access to information from Project Blue Book. In fact, the main scientist behind that government project appears in the film. During that scene where they had the lights on top of the mountain and like that. So yes, there is truth to that. Say the film Independence Day, the invaders from that movie, they're out there.
Oh yeah.
Thankfully, they recently joined the good guys, so we're not going to have to worry about them.
Well, wow, that's good to know.
But the thing is with that particular species is that they're known as some of the best warriors out there, to where both sides, the Draconians and the Galactic Federation, they were both scared of what they were capable of.
Right.
They have weapons that can completely annihilate the Greys altogether. So they've been trying to
Wow.
figure out how to get them on our side, so that way they can finally get back at the beings that have been terrorizing them for so long. So yes, there is truth to that, but you also have to remember there is a lot of creative freedom behind it as well.
Yeah.
So nearly every alien species shown in movies has some sort of basis out there.
Right.
So yes,
So
there's cat people, there's people that look like dogs, there's little greys, they're all out there.
It's much like humans then. There's lots of different. I mean, there's not one. Well, there's supposed to be not two of us look alike, so it's much like us, really, isn't it?
There's 24 different species of humans out there.
Right.
So on the Greys, are there 2 or 3 different type of Greys? Where like one is like the ones that they've sent away already, they're no longer here, and others that are actually for us?
There's essentially 4 different genome groups that a lot of the species, especially the ones that have been known to interact here on Earth, fall into. They have the man cultures, which is actually where we sit in. They all look a lot like humans. You have Greys, you have the reptoids, and you have insectoids. So yes, there are good Greys out there.
Right.
There's actually one in particular. They're known as the Eric. They're about yay high, very, very kind. They don't mess with humans. They're more interested in rocks and minerals.
Right.
In fact, there was an incident where all of a sudden I was coming home from a little Halloween party, and all of a sudden there was this orange hexagonal shaped UFO that kind of had a wobble, just all of a sudden appeared right next to me. I'm just looking right at it, and you can actually see inside the craft. They were that close, and they were just as shocked to see me as I was to see them. And the second I was trying to say, "Stop the fucking car!" I was like, to get out to take pictures, because like I said, they could have been no more than hovering 10 feet off the ground, within 20 feet away. They were that close, but their craft is fairly small because they don't get much higher than 4 feet tall at best. But there's more than just, like they say, Zeta Reticuli. There's almost like 4 different species that come from that particular sector alone. You also have to realize these different beings out there, they also have their own different ethnicities, just like here on Earth. So yes, you may have the tall, blonde, pale skin types, but they also have, ones with dark hair, red hair, darker skin. It's not, there's a lot more than people realize out there.
Yeah. Definitely. It's just because it's all been hidden from us for so long that all these research places have did all this behind the scenes, and it's only just now coming out. It's amazing.
But can you imagine what it's going to be like when you get to see all these different races?
I think it's going to be cool. Be like,
Is it going to be like what they show you on the sci-fi movies, where you see the crafts coming and going in the sky and things? Will it be like that?
But I think, excuse me, like Dakota said earlier about, it's my wife, it's my kids or whatever. I think when people start realizing they have offspring, they're not so likely to want to try to shoot everything in sight.
Hopefully.
I think that might have a different change of mind in them, to even to realize that. And all the people that's been taken, or and then they've got offspring somewhere.
No, you're right, and the reason why the Galactic Federation came together in the first place was because of a draconian invasion. They didn't want what happened to them to happen to anybody else.
Right.
And when that happened, they spread out everywhere. They already had colonies in different star systems. say like the Pleiades, you have Aldebaran that gets highly associated with Nazi UFO lore.
Yeah.
They already had colonies set out, but they did not. Basically, if you were to interact and interbreed with interplanetary relationships, were not frowned upon. In fact, they were actually highly encouraged because they saw it as a chance to bring worlds together. They wanted to encourage that. They still do. But when it comes to situations like here on Earth, like they have certain rules they have to follow to protect our sanity plus theirs.
Because we've got a tendency to want to destroy things. You can't blame people for blame them. You know?
Just wait till we start getting into the galaxy and start mining resources. And there's an asteroid. There's an asteroid out there worth what is it? What is it worth, Dakota? That asteroid is reckoned. What is that?
Almost like $14 quadrillion.
Yeah.
Wow, people will go try and find it when it lands.
Well, that's the thing. Once we go out into the galaxy, the need for finances is going to go away because that's going to be readily available. We allegedly have mining operations that humans from here on Earth are involved in, on Venus, on Mars. But there's still life on Mars going on right now. There's been several rebellions to break away from repressive Greys and Draconians. There's a race in the Pleiades that we're trying to convert over because they sided with the Draconians.
See, people will be like, aye, but Mars is desolate and know that. Look, Mars is not desolate. Mars is actually just like the Earth, a wee bit dry looking, right? You can actually breathe the air. It's just we believe what we're given, the images that we're given. It's no as if we can go up there.
Because we're dumbed down. Most are dumbed down. Not all, but most. Some.
Hold the truth.
Yep. Anybody got any more questions for them? Take advantage of them being here, y'all.
Yeah, we're nearly at 2 hours, guys, and I will have to go soon. It's nearly 12 o'clock here in Scotland.
Yep, so ask your questions, and then we'll let them go.
So, come on, don't be shy.
Now's your time, guys, to ask our Dakota and Christopher anything. Definitely check them out, guys, on that link Dakota put out, because they really have got a good place for people that's even just want an understanding of all this stuff. Go over, talk to the boys. They're willing to talk to anybody in private, even.
Yeah, if you have had UFO experiences or that, and you want to come on the show, click on the flow codes and go in and fill the wee form in. And
go in and tell them your story. You never know.
Got a question. Okay, ask away, and then we'll let them go.
By the way.
Come on.
They're probably typing it. Yeah.
Have to let me. A.
That's me. And if I talk in my phone, oh Lord have mercy, it puts everything wrong, and then I try to backtrack. Okay, let's see.
See, they're wanting Chris to talk.
A story of me. See, that's the thing about me.
Oh, it's Christopher.
All my stories as I'll tell you what. I'll tell you my birth story. Would you like that? I can remember being born. There you go. I'll tell you. It was 1981 when I was born. The morning. I can always remember it. It's clear as day. And I've told Drew this actually, and Dakota this. It was weird because it was like a white hallway, and I was walking down this white hallway, and I looked to my left and my right, and there was other people walking with me, right? And I looked behind me, and I could. You ever seen the film Ghost? You know the one I'm talking about with Patrick Swayze. See at the end, you can see all the people, and they're all waving, but you can't make them out. That's what it was like, right? And they were all waving as if to say like "Cheerio," that's you, go on your road. And then all of a sudden I woke up in this room with green tiles everywhere, and I thought, this what the hell's this? And there was green tiles everywhere, and there was a man and there was a nurse. Anyway, jump forward maybe till I was maybe about 15, 16. And I was talking to the doctor one day, the doctor that delivered me. Right? Now, jump back again. The hospital that I was born in got knocked down when I was 5. Right? It was totally leveled. And I was talking to the doctor and I says, listen, this is going to sound stupid. But I tell him what I experienced, right? And I says the room had all green tiles. And over on the left hand side there was a sink, and then there was a shelf full of cabinets, and he just went white. And he says, That's William Smiley, because I was born at William Smiley Hospital in Lanark. And how do you know that? Because there was no photos taken. And then when I was 5 years old, the hospital was tore down, knocked down. So, and I've actually spoke to Lisa Fry about this, and she's even says I've got a memory of me transitioning to this world.
That's
So there you
amazing.
go. Yeah. So there you go. I could have drawn it out a wee bit with kind of like
There you go, Hub.
other kind of things.
Wow. Wow.
Do you think that's why you had such a close relationship with your grandmother then? You've maybe been in some point in time her father or her mother or something.
What's that? You saying to me, Drew?
I'm just saying, we're having such a close bond with your grandparents and things. Maybe it was you were reincarnated as one of their parents or something, you know?
I don't know. See, I've spoke to Lisa Fry about this, and she says I have been on Earth a lot.
Right.
I know I feel like an older soul,
Mhm.
but I think I have been part of the family I've been,
Right.
you know. But I think I've also done other stuff, which I don't know. I don't know. See, I'm different from Dakota. I feel when it's his time to cross, he will go back to his family in space. Right? But when it's my time, I'm just going to cross.
Yeah, stay with your
That's-
Earthborn family.
It's weird. It's weird how it works, and it's
I definitely think you're an old soul. I mean, I've met Christopher in person. If what you don't know that we do go ghost hunting together, and I feel you're an old soul.
aye.
Definitely.
There's a strange thing is that I've actually got a family member. It was on my dad's side, and in 1960, he committed suicide. It was a kind of water treatment plant. He jumped into it and drowned, killed himself. But see, the photo of him is my double,
Right. Well,
which
see,
is
look at
very
that.
interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it might be. Maybe when I was walking down that hall, maybe that was me in the spaceship. I don't know. And they were all waving at me to say, cheerio, you're
Could
going to
be.
be born again. Or that was me getting reincarnated again because I wanted to come back. I had a mission. I had to come back and help Dakota and help you, Drew, and help everybody on a course, you know?
Yeah, I definitely think we're all here for a reason, guys. I honestly do.
Oh.
Cool. Okay, Dakota, do you have a message there for you?
Yeah, I was just reading that, and it's like Phoenix. There's certain things I'm looking into for other purposes, but the reason why those tons came to fruition was because they were needed at that time and still end up serving a purpose. Yes, there's other stuff coming together, but I've had to adjust my focus onto other projects, which will be hopefully coming very soon, but we'll also have to kind of look into things deeper. It's like, I know Paranormal Hub, they're wanting Chris to kind of talk more. Main reason he always bounces off of me is because
Well, I tell you what, Paranormal Hub, go and subscribe to Ghost Squad Scotland because I've got a live tomorrow night.
Remember,
with Drew,
yeah, we have our show on a Wednesday, guys.
and Dakota was going to pop on tomorrow night because we're going to actually talk about Rosalind Chapel. And
yeah, that's right. That's right.
We might be on a wee bit longer tomorrow night because there's tones involved. Actually, it's weird you actually mentioned the tones. There's tones involved. There's UFOs involved. There's a lot of stuff involved tomorrow night with Rosalind Chapel.
If anybody doesn't know about the tones and the sigil, when we were all part of Bold and Bonkers and working on some stuff, there was a reason that the sigil and the protection tone was made, basically, and it'll work with ghosts and things as well, guys. If you get a hold of these tones, it's basically a protection tone. If you feel you're being attacked, you can play the tone, look at the sigil, and whatever entity is, it does back off. I've tried it, I've used it, and it does work. Maybe Chris can give Mystical Love and Light the link to it, and she can put it in the description, because the tones do work.
Well, it's actually Dakota will be able to stick that in. I think it's on the Floco page, is it? No, I've just went and picked my phone up because it's charged up, and I went and flung it in my bed.
Definitely go onto the website, guys, and have a look at it and download it, because it's a very handy sigil and tone. I would advise it.
Cool.
Yeah, we actually utilize some of our music distributor platforms in order to get it out there to as many different platforms as we can. So you can find it on like iTunes. You can even use it on TikTok. That's how far I managed to get it on there.
Wow.
It's like the plan was just to make it as accessible as possible, because to the best of my knowledge, nothing like that had been done. But Chris is wanting me to kind of take a better look at Rosalind Chapel to see if we can try to replicate something for the things
It's quite interesting, because I found, well, I didn't find out, I've kept for a while, that my mother's side of the family, that's where they come from. Rosalind Chapel side. Aye. So there's just something there, because there is tones to do with Rosalind Chapel, and I don't think it's what people think it is, and I think Dakota's the specialist. The stranger, there you go, that's weird, that the specialist is the stranger.
That's why the specialist is the strange, isn't it?
There you go.
But the sigil definitely works, guys. I've used the sigil more than I have used the tones, and anything I've felt negative, and I visualised the sigil, and it's dispelled instantly, I must admit.
And I will say this, to kind of bounce back to the me abducting people situation. Something about that sigil is opening the door for me to be able to do that.
Right.
That was not my intention, but
There's only one thing that worries me. You've been abducting people. I hope you weren't probing them.
Oh my goodness.
Oh God, Chris.
You had to take it there, didn't you, Dakota? You had to take it there.
Well, I made the mistake of teaching Christopher something involving probing, and
he's right into it, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to experience it, that's the man to contact.
Like,
Do you want to remind Christopher about that jar, Mystical Love and Light?
Sure.
You want to remind him about the jar?
They're going to have some samples for you, Chris.
It's all right. He's just going to have to ask her for all the probings,
Remember, smash that like button, guys, please.
Aye.
Yes, and thank you everybody for coming in. Iron Horse says, is that on Bald and Bonkers channel?
Yes, it can be found there.
Okay. So we're gonna close it out here because it's getting late for them in Scotland. They're already on the next day. It's after 12 over there where they're at. I still laugh at Chris. All right, everybody. We thank you, everybody, for coming in. We're gonna let you go. And make sure you subscribe to everybody's channels. The chat will stay in here because Drew showed me how to do that. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.